There was a time when the global sports car scene was dominated by a few familiar nations. Italy built the exotics that everyone lusted after. Germany perfected the precision machines that could run all day without a hiccup. Japan quietly engineered dependable performance cars that punched well above their weight. And Britain had carved itself a proud niche in the 1950s and 1960s as the go-to nation for lithe, stylish, and often affordable sports cars. From the MGs and Triumphs that lined American college parking lots to the sleek Jaguars and Astons that turned heads on European boulevards, the British sports car industry was a powerhouse. But in the 1960s, a surprising challenger emerged from a place few people would have expected: South Africa. And this was no backyard kit car. It was a professionally engineered, stylish, and potent machine that could stand toe-to-toe with the best small sports cars Britain had to offer. Its name was the GSM Dart, and it is the car that put the Brits on notice. South Africa in the automotive world. Before we dive into the Dart itself, we need to set the scene. In the post-war years, South Africa was not exactly a global hub of automotive innovation. Cars sold there were typically imported from Britain or assembled locally from knockdown kits sent by European manufacturers. There was talent in the country: mechanics, racers, and engineers. But there was no sports car industry to speak of. That began to change in the late 1950s thanks to a man named Bob van Niekerk. Bob was an engineer with a deep passion for performance cars, and he believed South Africa could produce a competitive sports car of its own. Working with his business partner, Willie Meissner, he founded a small company called Glass Sport Motors, GSM for short. Why the name GSM mattered? Glass Sport Motors was not a random name. It referenced the fact that GSM intended to build its cars out of fiberglass, a cutting-edge material at the time. In the 1950s, fiberglass was still seen as a futuristic alternative to steel and aluminum, promising lightweight, resistance to rust, and the ability to mold complex curves with relative ease. Fiberglass also meant GSM could build cars without the massive capital investment that stamping steel panels required. This was critical for a small startup with limited resources. Inspiration from across the sea: Van Niekerk and Meissner were inspired by cars like the British Lotus and Austin Healey models, which had proven that a lightweight chassis with a modest engine could deliver thrilling performance. They saw an opportunity to offer something similar, but with their own twist. And here is where the story gets interesting. They wanted their car to be lighter, sleeker, and in some cases, faster than the British cars it would compete with. This was not just about making a sports car for the local South African market. It was about proving they could go head-to-head with the established players on their own turf. The birth of the Dart in 1958. The first GSM Dart rolled out of the workshop. From the moment you saw it, you could tell it was something special. The body was smooth and curvaceous, with a long hood, short rear deck, and a distinctive open grille that gave it a cheeky, almost mischievous expression. The Dart was a true roadster, with no roof and minimal weather protection. It was built for sunny climates and open roads, not rainy British afternoons. Under the skin, it featured a lightweight ladder chassis that kept the curb weight astonishingly low, around 600 kilograms depending on the version. Engines and performance. The Dart was designed to accept a variety of small displacement engines, many of them sourced from Ford of Britain. The most common power plants were 1.0 and 1.5-liter Ford inline fours, which might sound modest by modern standards, but in a car this light, they offered genuine sports car performance. The higher-spec 1.5-liter models could sprint from 0 to 60 miles per hour in under 12 seconds, which was competitive with MGs and Triumphs of the same era. More importantly, the Dart handled beautifully with quick steering, planted rear end, and a playful nature that encouraged spirited driving. Racing credibility. One of the keys to any sports car's reputation in the 1960s was racing success, and GSM knew that. The Dart quickly found its way into local motorsport events, from hill climbs to endurance races. It proved remarkably capable, often embarrassing larger and more powerful cars thanks to its light weight and nimbleness. In fact, the Dart's reputation grew so quickly that GSM began exporting the car to Britain. This was a bold move. It meant taking the fight directly to MG, Triumph, and Lotus on their home ground. And here is where the story gets really fun. The Brits take notice. When the Dart arrived in the United Kingdom, it caught people off guard. This was supposed to be the domain of the British sports car, a market they had owned for decades. Yet here was a sleek little roadster from South Africa, built out of modern fiberglass, with competitive performance and an exotic backstory. British magazines tested the Dart and came away impressed. They praised its lightweight, its agility, and the fact that it felt modern compared to some of the older designs still on sale in Britain. It was clear that the Dart was not just a novelty, it was a legitimate competitor. The GSM Flamingo. Buoyed by the Dart's success, GSM expanded its lineup in the early 1960s with a fixed-roof coupe called the Flamingo. This was a more sophisticated car, with a slightly longer wheelbase, improved suspension, and even more refined styling. The Flamingo could be fitted with engines up to 1.7 liters in displacement, giving it even better performance. It was aimed at the small GT market, competing with cars like the Lotus Elan Coupe and the MGB GT. Once again, GSM showed it could stand shoulder to shoulder with established British brands. Challenges and decline, but as with many small car companies, the road ahead was not smooth. GSM faced increasing competition both at home and abroad. Larger manufacturers could offer similar performance at lower prices thanks to economies of scale. The South African market was limited, and exporting cars to Europe was expensive and logistically challenging. By the mid-1960s, financial pressures were mounting. Production numbers were never huge. It is estimated that only around 100 Darts and 120 Flamingos were ever built. By the late 1960s, GSM ceased car production entirely, leaving behind a small but passionate legacy. Why the Dart mattered? The GSM Dart might not have dethroned MG or Triumph in sales numbers, but it accomplished something arguably more important. It proved that South Africa could design and build a sports car that met international standards. It challenged the idea that small, agile roadsters had to come from Britain or Italy. It also highlighted the advantages of fiberglass construction at a time when many manufacturers were still skeptical. GSM's ability to produce beautiful, lightweight bodies without massive industrial investment was ahead of its time. The driving experience: imagine sliding into a GSM Dart on a warm South African morning. The bucket seat hugs you just enough to feel secure. The 3-spoke steering wheel sits close at hand, and the instruments are clustered neatly on the dash. You turn the key, and the small 4-cylinder engine comes to life with a crisp bark. Out on the open road, the Dart feels alive. The steering is light and direct, the car changes direction eagerly, and the lack of mass means it dances over the tarmac rather than bludgeoning its way along. You do not need massive horsepower to have fun. In fact, part of the charm is wringing every last rev out of the engine and feeling the car respond instantly. Why the Brits respected it? British drivers were used to their own homegrown heroes, but the Dart offered something fresh. It had the simplicity and charm of an MG, but it felt newer and more modern thanks to its fiberglass body and up-to-date design. And there was a certain pride in acknowledging that a small team from halfway around the world could match the established players in quality and performance. It was a reminder that good ideas and passionate engineering could come from anywhere, even a country with no previous track record in sports car manufacturing. Collector interest today. Surviving GSM Darts and Flamingos are rare and highly prized by collectors, especially in South Africa. They represent a unique chapter in automotive history, and their scarcity only adds to the appeal. Restored examples occasionally appear at classic car shows, where they inevitably draw crowds and curious questions. In recent years, there has been a renewed interest in documenting and preserving GSM's history, with enthusiasts tracking down surviving cars and sharing their stories online. A symbol of determination, the story of the GSM Dart is ultimately about determination. It is about two men who refused to accept that building a world-class sports car was something only big companies in Europe could do. They saw a gap in the market. They believed in their abilities, and they delivered a product that surprised everyone. In the process, they gave South Africa a place in the conversation about great sports cars and left an enduring mark on enthusiasts who appreciate light, agile machines. When people think of South Africa's contributions to the automotive world, they might picture robust pickup trucks or locally assembled sedan. But the GSM Dart stands apart. It is a testament to creativity, resourcefulness, and the belief that location should never limit ambition. It did not topple the British sports car empire, but it made them take notice, and that alone is a remarkable achievement. The Dart and its coupe sibling, Flamingo, remains some of the most charming and intriguing classics to ever come out of the Southern Hemisphere. If you ever find yourself at a vintage car meet and spot one, take a moment to appreciate it. Because in its curves and its lightness, and in the gleam of its fiberglass panels, you will see the spirit of a small team from Cape Town who dared to dream big, and for a brief, shining moment showed the world what South Africa could do.